The Second World War ended in 1945. It left a world shattered and exhausted. Yet from the ashes arose a new struggle, the Cold War, a clash of ideologies. The US championed democracy. The Soviet Union promoted communism. Once allies, now deep suspicion and mistrust. The wartime alliance frayed. Germany was divided. The Cold War was fought in the shadows. It shaped the latter half of the 20th century. As the dust settled on World War II, a metaphorical Iron Curtain descended across Europe, dividing it into two distinct blocs. Winston Churchill coined the phrase in 1946 to describe the line that separated Soviet-controlled Eastern Europe from the West. The Soviet Union, having expanded its territory and influence during the war, installed communist governments in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, and East Germany. The United States responded with a policy of containment, aiming to prevent the further spread of communism. The Truman Doctrine, announced in 1947, pledged American support to any nation threatened by communist expansion. This policy was backed by economic aid through the Marshall Plan, which helped rebuild war-torn Western Europe and strengthened its ties to the United States. The division of Germany became a focal point of Cold War tensions. In 1948, the Soviet Union blockaded West Berlin, which was located deep within Soviet-controlled East Germany. The Western powers refused to abandon the city and launched the Berlin Airlift, a massive operation to supply West Berlin by air. For over a year, cargo planes landed around the clock, delivering food, fuel, and other essentials to the beleaguered city. The blockade was a failure for the Soviets, demonstrating Western resolve and solidifying the division of Germany. The Cold War was not confined to Europe. The Korean War, which erupted in 1950, further intensified the global Cold War rivalry. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, was the first major hot conflict of the Cold War. When Communist North Korea, backed by the Soviet Union and China, invaded US-supported South Korea, it triggered an international crisis. The United States, under the auspices of the United Nations, intervened militarily to defend South Korea. The war raged for 3 years, resulting in millions of casualties and ending in a stalemate. Korea remained divided along the 38th parallel, a stark reminder of the global ideological struggle. The Korean War demonstrated the devastating potential of proxy wars, where the superpowers fought indirectly through client states. Another flashpoint emerged in 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world came to nuclear war. The Soviet Union, led by Nikita Khrushchev, began placing nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the US mainland. President John F. Kennedy responded with a naval blockade of Cuba, demanding the removal of the missiles. For 13 tense days, the world held its breath as the two superpowers stood on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Through a combination of diplomacy and brinkmanship, a solution was reached. The Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba, and the United States secretly agreed to remove its missiles from Turkey. The Cuban Missile Crisis had a profound impact, highlighting the terrifying risks of nuclear escalation and the need for clear communication between the superpowers. The Cuban Missile Crisis cast a long shadow on the Cold War. Both the United States and the Soviet Union recognized the need to avoid direct military confrontation. They engaged in arms control talks, leading to the signing of the Limited Test Ban Treaty in 1963, which banned nuclear weapons tests in the atmosphere, underwater, and outer space. However, the nuclear arms race continued, with both sides amassing massive arsenals of increasingly powerful weapons. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, emerged based on the chilling logic that any nuclear attack would inevitably lead to retaliation, resulting in the annihilation of both sides. While direct confrontation between the superpowers was avoided, proxy wars continued to rage in various parts of the world. The Vietnam War, from 1955 to 1975, in which Communist North Vietnam, backed by the Soviet Union, fought against US-supported South Vietnam, became a major Cold War battleground. The long and costly conflict drained American resources and divided public opinion at home. The Cold War also played out in the realm of espionage, with both sides developing sophisticated intelligence networks, engaging in covert operations, sabotage, and disinformation campaigns. The Cold War rivalry extended beyond the Earth's atmosphere and into the realm of space exploration. The space race became a symbol of technological prowess and ideological superiority. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. This achievement sent shockwaves through the United States, which had underestimated Soviet capabilities in rocket technology. The Soviets followed up their success with the launch of Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, in 1961. These early Soviet triumphs spurred the United States to invest heavily in its space program, determined to catch up and surpass its Cold War rival. President John F. Kennedy famously declared in 1961 that the United States would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. The American space program made significant strides, culminating in the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, when Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the moon. The space race, while fueled by Cold War competition, also led to remarkable scientific and technological advancements that benefited humanity as a whole. By the 1970s, the Cold War entered a period of détente, characterized by a thawing of relations between the superpowers. Both sides recognized the need to reduce tensions and find common ground. A series of arms control agreements were signed, including the SALT treaties. However, détente proved to be a fragile peace. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 reignited Cold War tensions. The US responded with economic sanctions and military aid to the Mujahideen. The 1980s saw a resurgence of Cold War rhetoric and military buildup under President Reagan. Reagan labeled the Soviet Union an evil empire and initiated the Strategic Defense Initiative. The Soviet Union faced internal challenges. Economic stagnation, the Afghan War, and public discontent weakened the Soviet system. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms aimed to save the Soviet system, but contributed to its demise. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 marked a turning point. The collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe followed. The Cold War, though a period of intense rivalry and global tension, also had a profound impact on the world, shaping international relations, technology, and the global balance of power. The legacy of the Cold War is complex and multifaceted. The Cold War led to the formation of military alliances that continue to shape global security today. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, formed in 1949 to counter Soviet expansion, remains a cornerstone of Western defense. The Warsaw Pact, the Soviet-led counterpart to NATO, dissolved with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Cold War rivalry spurred unprecedented technological advancements, particularly in the fields of aerospace, computing, and nuclear energy. The space race, for example, led to the development of powerful rockets, satellites, and material science that have had far-reaching applications. However, the Cold War also left behind a legacy of mistrust and regional conflicts. The proliferation of nuclear weapons remains a major concern, and the threat of nuclear terrorism continues to haunt the world. Understanding the Cold War is essential for comprehending the complexities of the post-Cold War world. As we navigate the challenges of the 21st century, the lessons learned from the Cold War remain as relevant as ever.